Sahitya. You're listening to Version Upgrade, the podcast where we trade real stories about work, about life, and the tools we use to make both feel a little more human.
Hi, I'm Swetha. We're two South Asian women and 20-year friends who compare notes on what's actually working in our lives, not just what's trending on the internet.
Correct, Shata. Every week we pick one theme and we sit down for a quick, honest conversation. Shared chess and moments, contrasts in how we each handle situations, and కొన్నిసార్లు tiny little toolkit you can try in your own life.
Exactly. బట్ ఈ వీక్ మనం దేని గురించి మాట్లాడదాం అంటే ద బజ్. బజ్ అన్న వెంటనే అందరికి ఫస్ట్ గుర్తొచ్చేది AI. No, we're not going to hype it or sell it, okay? We want to talk about our real experience with it, how we rode the wave, మాకేది help అయింది, where did it get hurt, and where did it all fall short. So we want to keep this conversation very honest, clear, and loud, and share how we have experienced it.
So I want us to rewind a little bit. What was your first real interaction with AI?
Oh, I like that question. And I'm also going to give a disclaimer that this is my most favorite topic. So if I'm constantly talking, please take the liberty to ask me to stop, okay? This is my honest disclaimer. Now I take us back to 2023, very early 2023, when AI suddenly became the buzzword. And honestly, నేను అనుకున్నాను, okay, this is another tech gimmick. It'll flare up and fade away. This was my initial thought. And I think it was Feb of 2023, and I got pulled into this room at work, and someone said, "Hey, we're going to start building our own version of ChatGPT." My first reaction was, "Why do we need our own version, right? Like, can't we just use what's out there?" I really didn't know what was happening in the AI space then. That's when I started digging deeper, what AI could do, how it might help, especially for the large organizations that have tons of repetitive mundane tasks that still matter. My first interaction was with ChatGPT 3. So that was the first model we tried to integrate with. And at that time, it only accommodated 4,000 tokens. And again, for anyone listening who's not deep into this, context is basically the size of the model's working memory అనుకోవచ్చు ఎంత దానికి గుర్తుంటుంది అని. So how much of your conversation instructions, the uploads that you do, that it can retain in its memory at once. And back then, 4K tokens meant you'd get halfway through a serious conversation and suddenly it would forget the context and you would get random gibberish answers. And today, let's look at the context windows, guys. It's more than 100K tokens. And sometimes it's even more. Plus, it has so many clever tricks like retrieval. So it feels like almost infinite. When was the last time, Satya, that you felt you were talking or conversing with a model and it lost its context?
Yeah, ఈ మధ్య అయితే almost very rare, I will say that.
Yeah. Then we started by building our own GPT, but ours was a broader one, right? Instead of using just one model, we created a platform that exposed models from different providers. OpenAI, దగ్గర నుంచి Anthropic వరకు, we had all models people could interact in one single platform, and that was a game changer for us. People started using it. But as people started using it, so did they realize that, it's not up to the mark. They would come back and say, "Hey, it's not giving me current data." I'm like, yeah, because that's literally the last date it was trained on. If you notice or if you remember, back then the training data was only as of September 2021 అనుకుంటా. The other wild part of AI or my interaction with AI was the tech evolved super fast. Adoption was growing, and at the same time, every single day there was a new advancement. Suddenly, models became current. They started browsing. It could crawl websites, they could plug into tools. So if you work in AI, staying current is basically a full-time job. And again, for the listeners, towards the end of this episode, we will share things that helped us stay up to date because it's not easy for sure. So that's how my relationship with AI started and how it changed over time. So from a gimmick to I literally built platforms on top of this. What about you, Saitya? How was your first encounter?
I actually had to think about this because చాలా రోజులైంది. నేను ఆలోచిస్తే I think I learned about it because I have friends in the machine learning space. So I heard about models and LLMs, which are large language models. And of course, నేను tech లో పనిచేస్తాను కాబట్టి I heard about it. కానీ I hadn't really used any of it in my day to day. ఆలోచిస్తే I first probably used ChatGPT in 2023, like you. And beginning లో I didn't think too much of it. For me, it was basically, oh, ఇది more or less like Google search, but it's more personalized అనిపించింది. So instead of going to Google, I was asking ChatGPT అన్నమాట. I was also pretty dismissive. I used it for silly generic things first, like recipes adagdamo, or asking for questions to keep my toddler engaged, or random life stuff. Ekkado one-off question anamata. Work did not even cross my mind that time though. But then in conversations with friends, I realized, oh wait, this might actually be useful at work too, because Valandru, they kept talking about how much they were using ChatGPT and Claude and others. And I'm like, oh really? So slowly over a few weeks to a few months, it clicked on Matanakuda that I could use it to do a lot of grunt work. See, what I call as grunt work is the monotonous but necessary stuff that never goes away, which exists in every person's job. So what I did was I started treating it like this intern anamata, that you could assign tasks to. It's not like a genius, but someone who can do a lot of heavy lifting if you give really clear and specific instructions. Of course, if you ask me whether I loved that I had to learn a whole new skill called prompting, my obvious answer is no, because you suddenly realize, Anmata, yeah, I have to learn how to talk to this thing in a different way just to get value out of it. I would rather do it myself and I anpichade. But over time, I definitely saw the benefits. So if I take a step back, right, I would summarize my journey as started to be dismissive, used it for random personal stuff. Kani, now I rely on it for very specific things, both at work and at home. If I take a step back, I feel like if you learn how to use it properly, it can be very, very helpful.
That's so true. For me, my relationship with AI is more than just using it for making things easier, right? Because I'm closer to the code. So if seen it from a developer and a platform point of view, in the early days, people would say, why don't you just get the code from GPT? And yes, now we have like two flavors of models. Right? Back then, they were chat models, coding models, and they still exist. So you used to use coding models, but coding models also used to generate not that good code. The code would fall short at many levels, and context ఉండేది కాదు main గా. Like ఏదో simple functions like how to upload a file or tell me the code to check a regex expression. అలాంటి basic ఉండేవి కానీ we deal with platforms which have 10,000 lines of code. ఆ కాంటెక్స్ట్ ఫీడ్ చేయడానికి కూడా ఉండేది కాదు. బట్ నౌ యూ సీ దర్ సో మెనీ థింగ్స్. ద వైబ్ కోడింగ్ టూల్స్ హ్యావ్ ఇవాల్వ్డ్ లైక్ ఎనీథింగ్. క్లాడ్ కోడ్ కానీ, కర్సర్ కానీ, గిట్హబ్ కోపైలట్ కానీ. If you see, you can literally feed it a user story and then you'll get a plan on how to write the code and also a good chunk of code itself. These tools are not toys anymore. If you're working with something like, say, Claude Sonnet or other strong models, the quality of code can be very close to a senior developer, and that is a game changer.
And I think your lens is especially interesting, Shweta, because you've watched it evolve in real time and you've also seen it from the builder side, not just the consumer side. So, can you give a few concrete examples of where AI really helped you at work and where it didn't?
Definitely. From a software development lens, I think AI shines in the areas where historically I was guilty of ignoring. Okay, let me call out as developers for a second. We are terrible at documentation. And I think any developer who's listening to me will nod their head or smile or smirk. We are lazy at writing proper unit tests. And we love saying my code is self-explanatory, which is manandarki they'll say 80% of the time it's a big lie. So as a development leader now, I struggle to enforce things on my teams because I know I hated doing them myself when I was writing code full time. That's the first place AI has been magical for me. Documentation. It gives you to the point way better than what most of us would write by hand. Second thing, automated unit tests. Generally, really solid test coverage. It takes time, but this one generates it in minutes. If you actually lean into these tools, your development cycles can shrink at least by 10-20%. And again, I'm telling this conservatively. So delivery speed goes up. A lot of boring but important stuff stops slipping through the cracks. And then there's these whole tools and agent side of AI. చెప్పాను కదా నేను ఒకసారి స్టార్ట్ చేస్తే ఆగనని. When we say model context, right? What we mean is ఇందాక చెప్పాను కదా, like token context is that memory. So this is also that memory now not only remembers the conversation, but you can feed it with documents, tool outputs, and then this whole advent of MCP where you can have these systems talk to each other, which means ఇప్పుడు నేను ఒక tool OpenAI కోసం రాసాను అనుకో, I don't have to write a different tool for Claude or a different tool for Gemini. The same tool will work if they're talking using MCP and what. So that platform has evolved so much. You can design your own ecosystem and plug them into these models and have the agents stitch them together into one big shared context. The second area, it created an umbrella around the SDLC process. So నువ్వు ఒక business analyst ని తీసుకున్నావు అనుకో, earlier they used to take hours to write these user stories. Today they can listen into meetings, take the transcripts, feed into an LLM, put the right prompt, boom, you have a user story with the LLM actually prompting you for more questions to poke holes into that user story. Developers rely heavily on coding copilots. QA uses for generating edge cases, and docs can be generated from code conversations and design artifacts. So entire SDLC lo nuvu, first and foremost, the length of the SDLC has shrunk, the quality has improved, so it's a win-win. So that's where I felt it really helped. But just like everything, each coin has two sides, and so does our AI. So AI is not perfect. We all who have interacted with that by now might have realized it. And my favorite saying is garbage in, garbage out. If you give it random junk, you will get random junk. So indak no anna judu, should I learn something to get the results I want? I guess, especially in the development side of integrating with AI, yes, you have to learn good prompt engineering to really reap the benefit of these tools. You have to spend time understanding what prompts work, how to frame your context, how to review what it gives you. And another area where it still doesn't meet the mark, and to be honest, between us both, I don't think it will ever meet the mark, is risk management, security and compliance, and the hidden fragility in the code. A model cannot fully understand what risk looks like. For example, nee company ki risk means something else and mine means something else. So for the model to understand that context specific risk and ensure that is embedded in what it's generating is not LLM possible, at least in the current future. That's where my head is. And then there's data sensitivity also, right? Large firms, they sign contracts with these AI providers to ensure their data is not being used for training, but I don't think smaller teams and companies have that luxury. So you should be careful about what you're pasting in, right? Where it's going, what the terms actually are. So to wrap it up, AI is great for speed, automation, mundane tasks, but for risk, security, compliance, organizational judgment, it still falls short. What about you, Sahitya? From a product and consumer side at work, what was your experience?
నేను నా ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ గురించి మాట్లాడే ముందు జస్ట్ లిస్నింగ్ టు యూ అబౌట్ ఏఐ ఫీల్స్ లైక్ అ మినీ మాస్టర్ క్లాస్. అంటే యూ సీ ద హోల్ గట్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్ అండ్ ఐ సీ మోర్ ఆఫ్ ద సర్ఫేస్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్ బికాస్ ఐఎమ్ నాట్ బిల్డింగ్ ఎల్ఎల్ఎమ్స్ అండ్ ఆల్. And I also don't use AI to write code because I am a product manager. So that's not my day-to-day job. Kani, I do use AI quite a bit in my role now. And I'll give you a concrete example. And this is a very simple example. Earlier this year, I was leading a huge feature. It was very core to our platform, very foundational, spread across multiple teams, multiple departments, very tight deadlines as usual. Lots of leaders who want visibility. It's like your classic setup, anamata. Now, not every leader can join the weekly status meeting for a big feature like that, but everyone wants updates. So, appudu my then manager, what she asked me to do, she asked me and my engineering manager to post weekly meeting notes in a team channel, which highlights, hey, what is the progress, what is blocked, what did we achieve this week, what's coming up next. Because we did not have a dedicated program manager who could do this. See, I love building new features. That is the best and the most fun part of being a product manager. But those weekly notes, total grunt work. And Nenu, our engineering manager, we literally survived that by splitting it. 1 week she wrote them, 1 week I did. Kani, about 1/3 or midway through the project, our company adopted many LLM providers. And in this specific case, we used Gemini, and suddenly meeting notes became the simple copy paste and cleanup job. See, I will not say AI generated notes were perfect, not by a mile. In the content, they are not as nuanced as notes which are written by a human who is in the room. Kani, they are good enough to give leaders the right amount of context, to highlight blockers, and to save us at least an hour every meeting day. So for me, that was a big AI at work win. And it is a very simple win that I want to highlight. I'm not talking about vibe coding and building new features. I know there are all those you can do too, but I wanted to showcase and highlight a practical experience. Other places AI helped me day to day. One is slide decks, especially when I need to showcase my team's impact in a way that's executive ready and not like a quarterly OKR review or something. I can ask AI to suggest the structure, I can ask AI to draft bullets, and even help with phrasing. And another example is data analysis. I do a lot of number crunching week over week, quarter over quarter, comparing the results, what are the signal, where am I seeing more noise. Sometimes I just need a quick sense check. Sometimes I need deeper analysis. And again, AI is very handy there. So I always keep this mental rule. For me, AI is like this intern whose work I am ultimately responsible for. So నేను ఎప్పుడు I review, I validate, and I question everything it gives me. Does this number make sense? Is this trend really plausible? Is it missing a lot of context or nuance that I know based on my experience? So when I'm using it that way, it saves me time without taking away judgment. Kani, if I take a step back, where does it fall short for me? First thing is communication. Whenever I see people using AI to write messages, like Slack DMs, channel updates, ఒక tone ఉంటుంది that creeps in. And you don't need to be an expert. It's very obvious. Okay, it becomes this jargon heavy, overly polished, and weirdly mechanical. And it's that cookie cutter tone anamata. నాకేంటంటే so many of us are now remote, so that human warmth, it really matters. I want to feel like an actual person is talking to me with their quirks, maybe even with their typos. So I prefer a slightly messy but real message than a perfectly written AI one that sounds like it came from a robo. So for me, that is one thing that AI misses the mark. And second, I mentioned this in the Kuda, prompting as a skill. No matter who you are, if you use AI, you are now being asked to learn a new micro skill. How do I prompt this thing so it actually helps me anamata? And there's always this calculation naakaithe back of the mind. Do I spend the energy to craft the right prompt and go back and forth 5 times, or hey, I would just do it myself kada ane? And anyone who has worked with an intern will relate. Sometimes it just feels faster to take on the work and finish it yourself. So, as a consumer of AI at work, that's my story. Big time savings on notes, decks, analysis. Still not convinced about AI generated communication and constantly weighing, hey, is this worth prompting for, or should I just do it myself?
I love the analogy of the intern that you gave. I like it. So, Ponle, ఇప్పుడు వర్క్ గురించి మాట్లాడాం కదా, let's step out of work. How did you end up using AI at home front?
I think home is where things get very chaotic. మన అందరికీ తెలిసిందే కదా. For me, ఇందాక చెప్పినట్టు AI first entered my life very simple, like recipes అడగడము, keeping my toddler engaged, random ideas. కానీ one area where AI really shined for me is travel planning. This summer we went to Atlanta and Smoky Mountains, and normally the entire job of figuring out what to do falls on me. Kani, this time I had zero time to plan. And honestly, AI kind of saved the trip. Especially for Smokies, it helped me figure out which visitor centers, which areas to stop. Everything AI recommended turned out to be really solid, and I even saw a bear in the Smokies. So I feel like I owed that one. Yeah. See, I don't think it will ever replace an actual friend's recommendation, but when I don't have time to read 5 different travel blogs and a guidebook, it is incredible. So I don't think I'm going back to pre-AI era of trip planning.
So if you want to see a bear, ask GPT where to see a bear in Smokies. It tells you, and Sahitya will also tell you.
True.
For travel, yes, AI is basically doing what you and I have done, right? Researching through blogs, forums, Reddit threads, and it then compresses all of this into a matter of minutes, which is amazing. two areas where I personally used at home was I was trying to create a timetable for my son, and I was trying to balance his classes, downtime, schoolwork, and I asked AI to help me create weekly timetable. చిన్నప్పుడైతే మనం రాసుకునే వాళ్ళం. I was too lazy to do it. And it actually gave me a very good first draft, which I was able to improvise. And the second thing I found it handy was for party planning, especially when you have to think through games and organizing. It kind of did a pretty decent job. And when I tweaked the prompts and made it to be more desi, like Antakshri gurinchi, Damsharats gurinchi, which was cool. And I liked how it kind of gave me creative Damsharats. An idea it gave was trying to act out a song, which seemed fun. Instead of bouncing between 10 tabs, I get everything consolidated in one place.
Yeah, no, party అన్న వెంటనే I remembered something new. AI helped me create my party invites for my most recent Diwali party. So it's not just travel planner and it's also party designer now for me.
True, true. Okay. Back to, ఇందాక చెప్పాను కదా, earlier I said, like, AI గురించి మనం ఎంత మాట్లాడుకున్నాం, but staying current with AI is like a full-time job, and I kind of vouch for it and mean it. But I want to close our episode and leave people with a practical toolkit what helped me and you so they can piggyback over. So I'll go first with a few things that actually worked for me. So main kind of pick a home base instead of 100 sources. For me, that's the official blogs of the main providers I actually use at work. So OpenAI, Microsoft, Claude, Anthropic. And second thing that actually kept me intrigued about it, there is this newsletter that I follow. It's called TLDR. I think in one of our posts we'll try to put the link for it. And no, I'm not being I'm not sponsored for it, at least not yet. Eventually, let's hope. But that helps me know enough surface level information about what the advancements are, and then if I want, it gives me enough links to dig deep, and I think that's a tremendous source. Second thing, in a day I try to keep an hour to just focus on AI and learn about it weekly. అప్పుడు కూడా I try new features, new tools. That helps. And then mainly focus on your lane. I don't need to know everything about every model, right? I care about coding models, tools that plug into my SDLC, and the infra side of running things safely. So I just try to narrow down. How are you keeping up with the trends, Saitya?
Mine is a more humanities version of that అనుకో. I focus more on use cases, not headlines. So ఎప్పుడన్నా whenever a new feature drops, I ask, hey, can this help me with my product work or is just cool? If it doesn't map to my day to day, like my roadmap, my data analysis, I don't chase it. And I learn in context. See, if I'm already working on something, then I'll ask AI, hey, what is the best way to structure this? But I don't sit and study AI as a separate homework subject. I just pull it into whatever I'm already doing. And lastly, I talk to friends. Honestly, like ఇప్పుడు నీతో మాట్లాడుతున్నాను చూడు, people who are deep in that space, that is one of my best filters. If people around me are excited about the same thing, then I know it's worth my time.
Awesome. So if you're listening and feeling overwhelmed by AI, don't try to learn everything. Pick a couple of trusted sources. Give yourself a weekly experiment and focus on what directly upgrades your work and your life. All right, I think that's a good place to wrap. Today we talked about AI not as a shiny object, but as an intern, a power tool, and sometimes an annoying coworker. We shared where it really helps at work, at home, where it falls short, especially around risk, security, communication, that human warmth we all still need, and how we personally stay up to date without losing our minds.
Yeah, if you're listening and wondering how to use AI in your own life, maybe the takeaway is this. Use it to shrink the grunt work, but don't outsource your judgment, your values, or your own voice.
That we'll be back next week with another conversation from our messy, evolving lives.